Okay, before I continue, I think it'd be good to talk a little bit about, introduce some terminology that's going to make your life much easier. Rather than describing these words, we have a name for these types of words. First, the mark, the accent mark, I'm going to call it tilde. Tilde is a word for it. Some people say acento, but I think that is ambiguous because what if you mean your accent, your general speaking accent? Does it sound like you're speaking Spanish? So I always call it a tilde, and this tilde is the mark over the A, the E, the I, the O, the U in Spanish. A, E, I, O, U. Now, tilde is also refers to this thing on the ñ, like in my last name, Quinones. But that's not what we're talking about today, so I'm going to hide that so you don't get confused. So tilde, if I say tilde, I'm referring to that little accent mark. To make it, I will show you, just in case you had a doubt. A, I, O, U. Nice little, strong, 45-degree angle, thing like this. Don't do this kind of thing. It looks terrible. A little dot kind of thing. That's garbage. Nice and strong like this. On the E, you're going to sort of take over that dot. Boom. Put it like that. O and U. We never put these over any consonants in Spanish. Okay, so tilde. Before we continue with this discussion, I think it's time to talk about one more thing. Keep in mind, I'm still not talking about la tilde diacritica. This is diacritico, which distinguishes two homonyms, homophones, and diptongos, which separates two vowels that normally work together. I'll talk about those in a later video. But this word here, grave, is an important word. Grave refers to a word that has the strongest syllable, not at the end, but the second to last. We always count from the back in Spanish. So it doesn't sound like minute. It sounds like minute. You see my voice goes down. Minute. This is louder and it's more stressed, so it's minute. This is minute. The type of word for that is grave. That's what grave refers to. And in Spanish, by default, these words end with A, E, I, O, U, N, or S. In Spanish, A, E, I, O, U, N, o S. This is, as I said, the default. Now, the other type of word is aguda. Minute is an example of aguda because the stressed syllable is on the end. Minute. Not minute, but minute. And these words, by default, always end with a consonant. Of course, N and S behave as vowels, so these are always consonants. The exception, this is the exception, because this one ends with a vowel. That's why we had to mark it in my previous example. Here is, actually I found it. It's like this. The default, because this grave word ends with a vowel, is fine like this. But this does not go along with the default mode. It does end with a vowel, but it doesn't sound like minute, it sounds like minute. That's an exception, we have to mark it. Now the opposite that we already talked about is this word record. We said, what if all words that end with consonants naturally sound loud at the end? Record. That's how it is in Spanish. This is the default in Spanish. If you see a consonant at the end, termina con consonante, by default, this is an aguda word, means you pronounce it stressed at the end. You find a new word with a consonant at the end and no accents on it, no tildes, that is pronounced aguda, stress at the end. This then is the exception, record, because it ends with a consonant. But we want to pronounce it grave, like minute, record, this kind of thing. So this, let me clear this and drop this on top, and I think we're going to be able to see some, we'll do some word pairs to really differentiate between these. Check this out. By default, a grave word ends with the last letter being a vowel, or N or S. This is pronounced hablo, which means I speak. Hablo. It has to be pronounced hablo because there's no accent, no tilde written on this word. It has to be hablo. Well, then how would you say habló, meaning I spoke? Habló is aguda, and the last letter is a vowel, but this is an exception. I put these marks here just to remind you that exceptions have the tilde over the vowel. Hablo, habló. Notice we don't put an accent mark on the A here, on the A, because by default it sounds like hablo. Here's another example. How do you pronounce this word? Papa, which means potato. And how do you pronounce this word? Papá, which means father. Keep in mind that ese is also considered vowel, so this sounds like veras, as in de veras, which means truly. And this would be verás, verás, because verás is pronounced loudly at the end, stressed at the end, but it ends with that S, which is considered a vowel. And here's one of my favorite ones. Which word here is the name of the language I'm speaking right now? This one. It sounds like inglés. This is a word in Spanish, but it means crotches, which is probably not what you want to say when you're talking about what you speak. Now, knowing this, how do we pronounce this word here? By default, it must be pronounced gano, which is I win. If you wanted to say gano, the only way to do that is to mark it. It's now an exception. It is now aguda, gano. Now, just to show you that we're not only dealing with 2-syllable words, here is a 3-syllable word. We still only count from the back. It's the second from the last, so it's grave. Alcanzo. And this version over here would be alcanzó. Alcanzó is I reach. Alcanzó is he reached or she reached. And here's another one, even longer word, estudiaran. Estudiaran, which means if they studied. Estudiaran. And this is estudiarán. Remember that n is works along with these with the vowels. Now let's jump over to some consonants. If the last letter is a consonant, by default, what is it? Aguda. The exception would be grave. So this word here is pronounced control. It is by default naked. You don't need to put an accent mark on it because it sounds like control, aguda. Notice, estudiarán, control. The voice goes up at the end, but this one must have an accent mark. If you don't, you'll pronounce it like this. Now to contrast, this one, what would go here? It would have to be a word that ends with a consonant and the second to last syllable is stressed. Fácil is a good example of that. Fácil. Nobody would say fácil. It's fácil. Here's another word. A 3-syllable word. Again, we only count from the end. So this is not the 3rd syllable. This is still the last syllable. That's what we're talking about. And this sounds, of course, like español. Español. And we can contrast that with another 3-syllable word. Again, counting from the end. The last syllable, the second to last syllable. This word is pronounced difícil. Difícil. But it is not a default word, because by default, a consonant-ending word should be pronounced like difícil. But this is not difícil, this is difícil. So we sort of force the accent, force the stressed syllable to fall on the second to last syllable with an accent mark. as I did right there. Okay, in my next video I'll probably talk about what if the stress is not on the second to last syllable or on the last syllable. Let me say one more thing before we go. This category right here is by far the most common category in Spanish. Most words in Spanish are grave words and end with a vowel. If you think about family members, these common words like hermano, hermana, or hermanos, hermanas, abuelo, abuela, nieto, primo, sobrino, nuero, cuñado, all those words, except for one of them, is grave with vocal. Also animals, common animals, caballo, vaca, perro, gato, ganso, pato, many words that are many animal names. And also if you think about numbers, for example, uno, cuatro, siete, once, all these words are also these default words. So you can see that whoever designed this system tried to maximize, actually let's say it this way, whoever did it tried to use the fewest amount of tildes possible. This is by far the most common one, and that's why it's a default. We don't want to have to mark all these words, just leave them. Chances are that's how the word is going to be in anyway. So I think I'll leave it for now there, and if you have any trouble, just watch it again. I think you'll pick this up. It's a very regular system, and that's it for now. By the way, do you like how this is like slightly 3D? Ooh, something they can't do on the Khan Academy. That's why I did that.